Victor, can everybody see the screen okay? I'm going to be using that quite a bit, so we're a little bit long here. But I'd like to start off by saying thank you very much, Victor. Thanks to the Chamber, and congratulations to you. And I think Victor needs a round of applause. This is his last official function, and he looks like a pretty young guy. I'm amazed he's been doing this for 6 years or so. So thank you very much. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I had a chance to do this in Saskatoon. I really enjoyed it. I've been to Regina a few times now, and I've been very impressed by the city. When you live in Saskatoon, you hear about that little town to the south. I'm not sure what goes on down there. And you come here, and it's a really wonderful place. I thought I was going to show up to a town of about 20,000 people, and there's a lot of people here, and it's a wonderful place. And I've been so impressed by the Capitol and the Capitol building. As Victor mentioned, I've worked all over the world. I've been to many Capitol buildings. You have one of the best in the world. You really do. This is something to be very, very, very proud of. So I hope you're excited about this. I do have one question when I start. Is like, where is winter? You know, I came up here and people said, "Oh, have you heard about our winters? You know, are you going to be able to do this?" And so I went out. My wife came up and joined me. I'll talk a little bit about my family. I'll talk about myself a little bit before I get into asking you some questions about you. But we came up and it snowed sometime in November. We probably had a few feet of snow on the ground with the wind blowing it around. We went out gung-ho, bought some snowshoes. We went out one day, and the next day it all melted and hadn't come back. There's no snow in Saskatoon. But we're very, very glad to be here. I am married. I've been married for about 28 years now to my wife, Carolyn. I have 2 boys, and she has joined me in Saskatoon. I have 2 boys, both of which went to school at Colorado School of Mines in Denver, Colorado. One is still there. The other one has actually graduated as a chemical engineer, and he's moving to Minneapolis. So we're getting spread out a little bit as a family. But we're very, very pleased to be here. We have lived in Canada twice before. We lived in Newfoundland for 3 years. Somebody at the table asked me, after living all over the world, where was your favorite place to live? And I said Newfoundland. Our kids were 11 and 13 years old. It's a perfect place. It was like living in the 50s. It was wonderful. I fell in love with humpback whales. I bought a boat out there, did the whole thing, and it was wonderful. We had the opportunity then to move over to Calgary, and I ran the Heritage Mobile business prior to merging that with IOL. And then as soon as we settled into Calgary, and my wife fell in love with the place, and we fell in love with skiing and doing all that, we had a knock on the door and said, "We'd like you to go down to Caracas, Venezuela." So I did a bit of that. So just a bit about myself. So before I get started here, I wanted you to kind of at least take notice of the picture here. Does everybody in the room know what that is?
The clear stuff is halide, the yellow stuff is halide, the red stuff is carbonate.
This guy knows. You may have to come up and do some of this speech for me. So I'm an oil and gas guy, so I'm glad you explained that to me. But all we were trying to do there is make it feel a little bit more glamorous. You know, I told my wife I'm leaving the oil and gas business. I said I'm going into the diamond business. But we're kind of looking at the diamond business. Really what I'm doing is going into the fertilizer business. And she's like, what? So we actually have some amazing pictures of potash we've developed over the last few months. So now I get to ask you a few questions, and I'm only going to ask 4 or 5, and they're all very, very easy. And what I'd like to do is I'd just like to know the audience so I can kind of connect with you guys a little bit. So who in here has lived in Saskatchewan since childhood? So most of the room. So you're very committed to this. You know, you go to some presentations and nobody's from where you're talking to the audience, and so it's nice to know that. I'd like to understand a little bit about what sector you're from. Who comes here from the agricultural sector? Okay, about 4 or 5. Okay, how about the mining sector? Wow. Okay, the government officials. So it sounds like we have just a lot of very interested business managers, owners that are coming to see what's happening. So that's important for me to know as I go through this. I don't want to start explaining mining techniques and have to look up and find out the entire room is full of 25-year experienced miners. Tough question. Now think about this. Try to think back about 2 years ago. Don't think about last year. Who had heard of BHP Billiton before we made our quiet entry into the province? So we had a few. I told the story in Saskatoon. When I changed from ExxonMobil, that has a lot of name recognition, to BHP Billiton, my wife stayed confused for about 6 months. She thought I wanted to work for BP. but it's, you know, it's a big company. I'm going to have the chance here to tell you about that. Now, the other thing I need to clear up in my own mind, when I was in Saskatoon, what I was told, and I continue to be told this, and I was surprised to find the stadium just across the street here, is that the real Rough Rider fans live in Saskatoon. All right, so just to get this off my mind, a big round of applause for from the Rough Rider fans in the audience. Okay, anybody in the room willing to admit you're not a Rough Rider fan? Actually, we have none. In Saskatoon, we had 3. They were escorted out like 30 seconds after asking the questions. I'm not sure what's happening there. So, but I do have a Rough Rider shirt now. I meant to bring it today, but I came straight over from Calgary. I didn't have it with me, but I do have a Rough Rider shirt. I've not been to a game, but next season I'll be down here enjoying those games. Okay, so you see a picture up there. Anybody in the room know who that is in the picture or where that was taken? And actually, you shouldn't really know that, but it's actually a picture of my grandfather. And I like to talk about this and brag about this a little bit. That's a picture taken in 1928, just outside of Quill Lake. My grandfather, he was just married in 1928. He just decided he wanted to go make his fortune in Canada. So he got on a boat, landed in Halifax, got on a train, came across, and just stopped at Quill Lake, got off, and said, I'm going to homestead here. So, you know, when I think about the trials of moving around the world, I just feel like a wimp when I think about what he had to do and do that. But he stayed in the province for about 4 years. He lived in Nut Mountain, Quill Lake, and he really fell in love with the place and he wanted to stay. And I've got a really good set of memoirs that we've actually published for our employees. And about 4 years into this, he wrote a letter back to his previous employer, who was a farmer in the UK, and said, I want to stay here, will you send me 1,000 pounds? Well, it was close to the Depression, things weren't going well, and his previous employer said, no, I'll pay your ticket to come home. So he did that. He didn't do that until after my mother was born. My mother was actually, by complete happenstance, born in Saskatchewan. She was born in 1931 in a little outpost hospital in Kelvington. So I'm saying this to kind of say I've got a reason to be back here. I'm excited to be here. When we go out and we visit the communities and we go to the Aboriginal communities and we go through these small towns, I've done a lot of this with Chris. It's fun for me. I just kind of picture them coming across on the train, getting out, reading their memoirs, and learning about the times back then. So I just wanted to share a little bit of that with you. The last session, I actually brought a birth certificate. I didn't do that this time, just in case there were any doubters in there. Okay, so disclaimer, I'm not going to read this. Obviously, no forward-looking statements here, so I'll click right past that. So now we'll get to the main reason we're here. I am going to read the speech. I prefer not to, but there's a lot of detail. I'm just learning the business, and I'd like to take you through quite a bit of detail here. It won't take more than about 20 minutes to get through the slides, but it will take about that amount of time. And today what we're going to do is kind of take you into the mine. We're going to show you how we're going to do this. There's been some speculation that we're not going to be able to do this. We're not serious about doing this. I think you're going to come away from today realizing we are doing this, we're progressing it, and it is going to be done in a short period of time here. I'll start by giving you a brief overview of BHP Billiton. By doing so, I hope to give you the picture of our potash development program within the context of what is one of the world's top companies, BHP Billiton. BHP Billiton has a history of over 150 years and has developed a superb balance sheet that sits behind its long-term view of the world. In that context, we are building a series of projects that we believe will produce over 16 million tons of potash per year. Now, to put that in perspective, the whole industry does about 50 million tons. The very largest companies in the province do 10 to 12 million tons. So we've seen a greenfield project, and how we're doing it is very different than it was done back in the 60s. I'll also touch on the logistics plan, which is a very critical aspect of the business. We're going to have to move this potash 1,800 kilometers from here over to the coast and then put it on ships and take it around the world, and I'll talk a bit about our marketing business. Many of you have heard about, or some of you have heard about BHP Billiton. What I'd like to do now is just tell you a bit more about the company. This is a company I'm very, very proud of. So the last time we showed this, we had a whole lot of words. Now we've got a bunch of dots. But basically, if you look at the picture, we've got the listing of our 10 different customer sector groups. As the map shows, BHP Billiton has a diverse range of commodities, customers, and markets spread across virtually every region of the world. BHP Billiton operates 10 groups. We call them customer sector groups because they are based on customer needs. These are listed in the key of the map. The CSG that is based in Canada is headquartered now in Saskatoon. We were in Vancouver, we've now moved to Saskatoon, and we call it the Diamonds and Specialty Products. We manage the Cutt diamond mine in the Northwest Territories, and we're setting up shop to build a world-class potash business. While potash is a new commodity to us, we believe our experience in mining, marketing, and bulk commodities such as iron ore will serve us well as we develop this business. We also have the cash to ensure our potash development projects have significant financial muscle behind them. They are backed by the balance sheet of one of the world's largest companies. And this is a pretty interesting fact that many people don't know, but during 2011, we were always among the top 10 companies in the world measured by market cap. For most of the year, we were number 3 behind Exxon and Apple. And so, big company that many people haven't heard about. And so we want to teach you a bit more about ourselves as we go. We're also the world's largest mining company in the world. We operate in 100 assets in 25 countries. We employ about 41,000 people. Although our headquarters are in Melbourne, Australia, we base each business where the decisions can be taken close to the operations. So after the bid, it was not a big call for us to say, where's the potash? It's all around Saskatoon. Where's the business community? Generally around Saskatoon, and we readily move the business there. So why potash? Simply put, and many of the folks in the room will understand this completely, but the world population is increasing. Arable land as a proportion of population is on the decline. Potash helps farmers to maximize yield and promote sustainable agricultural practices. The potash business will be a big business in our global organization. It'll be based right here in Saskatchewan. So when you think about this list, I won't read them all out there, but you have things like aluminum, petroleum, base metals, and such. Out of those 10, there are 5 that are going to be big places we invest. We're going to invest $80 billion over the next 5 years in 5 areas. And they're mainly things like petroleum, iron ore, metallurgical coal, which goes into the steel making process, copper in South America, and now potash. $80 billion commitment. We're going to spend a whole lot of that right here in the backyard. So some of the other assets, we've made an announcement on our diamond business. We're taking a look at that. Aluminum is not as strong as it used to be, stainless steel, but the 5 I mentioned are going to be the place we focus. And we're going to have one of those big businesses right here in your province. Okay, I won't go into the details of this chart too much, but I do want you to kind of understand the financial capacity of the company. You might have seen our annual results in August. We reported record annual profit of $21.7 billion for the last financial year. So big company, big profits. One of the strengths of BHP Billiton is our diversified portfolio. We operate assets in many of the commodities that are used to help the world meet its growing needs through the cycle of demand. As countries such as China industrialize, demand for steel-making materials matures first, followed by the need for commodities such as copper for the manufacturing of electric wire. The demand for energy and foods steadily increases as the population grows and becomes more prosperous. The move into potash rounds out the BHP Billiton support for the growing economies. We're based in Australia primarily. We feed iron ore, metallurgical coal, copper into China. This is a natural fit for us. And when I talked about the top 5, there's a real natural fit in the overall life cycle as China, India, and other places grow. You will see on the left of the chart the DSP, that's us. Makes a little bitty sliver here. We hope that changes. I hope to be standing up here in the future where we talk about being one of the big 5, contributing to the bottom line in that way. And when our board looks at this, that's what they see. They see iron ore, base metals, which is copper, petroleum, metallurgical coal that is growing, and then the expectation is that our potash business will grow into one of those big bars on the curve. So let's talk a little bit about our position. And we're very proud of this, and I think it's the basis of everything we're doing here. 5 years ago or so, we started considering potash as a future option in our portfolio. We acquired 77 square kilometers of land in Manitoba, just across the border. Following the acquisition of Anglo Potash in 2008 and Athabasca Potash last year, we now hold exploration rights over 14,500 square kilometers of highly prospective ground in what is known as the Tier 1 basin. We really focus as a company on Tier 1 basins. If you look at big LNG basins and big other mining basins, we consider this a big Tier 1 basin. And for the miners in the room, you will know this or maybe teach me something about this, but my basic understanding is this line is a line that delineates where the potash, the top of the potash, is subsurface about 1,000 meters below the surface. The black line delineates where the potash is about 1,100 meters below the surface. Our view is that is the best alley for underground mining as far as depth, the temperature, the deposition, and all of that. When you get deeper, down towards where we are here today, still a whole lot of potash. The potash covers this whole gray area. We get down into where we think it's a bit too deep and hot to do the underground mining, but we do agree that solution mining is a prospective thing to do. And other companies are progressing that. So you can see a little bit of spattering of orange here. We haven't updated the slide. We continue to amass acreage in that area. We think it is very prospective, and we are advancing technical projects to take a look at that area. So, although we have acquired a significant position, it wouldn't mean much if we were not actively delineating the acreage to build a credible pipeline of projects. We get the question a lot, what are you guys doing with all of this acreage? The chart shows the seismic activity that we'll have completed by this summer of 2012. We have completed an extensive drilling program in the Young area and are running 3D seismic and drilling with 2 rigs in the Melville area. As you can see, we are aggressive in the exploration to ensure our most advanced projects are backed up with the technical data required. The bottom line is that we not only have the access to the acreage, but we're building a detailed understanding of the acreage quickly. So on the slide, this red is where we've run 3D seismic. The yellow is where we've run this color, I think it's kind of a yellow color, is where we've run the 2D, and then there's a few areas where we have not run the seismic yet. But we are very, very active in the area. We've got a massive exploration program going on, and you'll see us across the province. If market conditions continue and these deposits prove to be as good as we hope, we might be building in Saskatchewan for decades to come, and that is our hope. All right, picture of our building. I'm not sure how many of you guys live or visit Saskatoon very often, but we're right there on 3rd Street. We have Chris Ryder here today with us, our External Affairs Vice President. He's been in charge of building out this building. It's a fantastic building. It's a great design. We're very, very proud of it. It's too small. So we have great plans that over the next 3 years, we have plenty of room for everybody. We have 3 floors open. They're all full. The fourth floor opens in March, and we're going to be undersized by about 100 people. As we go forward, we think what we'll do is set up an operating center also in Saskatoon. And so we'll have the main kind of corporate office and also an operating center there. So we are looking at early on in the process here of expansion. But as you guys know, Saskatchewan has about 40% of the world's known potash reserves. So it makes sense for us to set up our potash headquarters here, and I've talked about that. This business will be supported by a dedicated project hub working with S&C Lavalin, based in Toronto. And we also have already worked together to acquire building space in Toronto with S&C Lavalin. Between us and S&C, we have about 350, grow that to about 500 in the next 6 months. So again, we took out three floors, we need 2 more. But that's not a bad problem to have because we're so confident in what we're doing here. So in the last few months, we've opened up the offices. We're excited about that, and we're putting a pretty good footprint in. Almost $2 billion has been spent so far in the potash projects in Saskatchewan, with over $1.2 billion being dedicated to Jansen alone. The other money was primarily associated with acquisition of the acreage. We are studying other properties, and it is likely that other projects will be a similar time frame to Jansen. We hear a lot of speculation about the timing of this. Can you really do this by 2015? We've been doing it for a while, and we'd say the life cycle of these mines is about 7 years. So we're talking about Jansen coming online in 2015. We've been working on it for over the last 2 to 3 years, and we've been actively building it for over a year now. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. As we said, Jansen's the most advanced project, and I'd like to start now taking you kind of into Jansen and what we're doing here. Okay, very, very hard to see this picture, but it's an aerial photograph of the Jansen site, and only a very small part of the Jansen site. This is where our shafts are located. So this is our production shaft, this is our service shaft. I'll talk about our freeze plant, and this is probably the size of kind of 2 quarter sections. Our plant site that we are now preparing is about 75 quarter sections. So it's a big, big footprint, and we're moving forward on that. Jansen is being developed as a new conventional underground mine. In developing the Jansen project, BHP Billiton will use modern project planning, mine planning, and production technologies to deliver a world-class project. The project is currently in the feasibility study, during which the design work is being completed to a level that allows major procurement to take place and major contracts to be awarded. Now, having said that, we're starting to award a number of those contracts, so we're very confident that we've completed the engineering on. So that's where people do get a bit confused about where we are. S&C Lavalin, as I mentioned, has been retained as the EPCM contractor for the project, and all shaft sinking contracts are in place and are active now. Early work has commenced in the shaft sinking and the site preparations for the production facilities ahead of the final sanction of the projects to protect the overall project schedule. So although we haven't gone to the board for final sanction, we have given them updates. Our board was here in Saskatoon in October, and we've kept them informed. I go back to the board in March, we keep them informed. Once we understand that everything has come together, we'll go forward for final approval. The EIS has been approved, and we expect to take the project to the BHP Billiton board later in the year. Jansen has an ultimate design capacity of 8 million tons per annum. Most of the mines in the province are closer to 2 million tons, making it the world's largest potash mine. However, our typical long-term approach, BHP Billiton has elected to construct the mine in stages, with the first stage coming online in 2015, and I'll explain those stages. I'd like to explain these pictures. This is actually a picture on the inside of the freeze plant. So that has been constructed, it is operational, and I'll explain in this slide what we're doing with that freeze plant. It's a pretty impressive facility. If you go to Jansen today, and I was out there about a week ago, you'll find about 250 people working there. That's rapidly going to build over the next year to about 2,500. So just on the front end of this thing, and it's rapidly coming, and there's a lot of activity. Site preparation for the surface facilities has started using mobile equipment. We will move 2.2 million tons of earth during the next 6 months. 2.2 million tons of earth, and that has started. We will transport 1.1 million tons of aggregate to the site. That's about 100 trucks a day, delivering aggregate every few minutes. So we're offloading a truck every few minutes, and there's a circulating. We're working with the local municipalities to make sure that we're doing that in a very safe way. We're taking a 3-day timeout every 11 days to allow road work to be done and allow that to be worked through. But if you go out there today, you will see a whole lot of activity. We've also started excavating the 50-meter shaft collars for each of the tube shafts, and I'll talk about that on a subsequent slide. The freeze plant is operational, and the freeze program is on track to allow us to extend the production service shafts through the Blairmore Aquifer, where you have water, 500 meters below the surface. The freezing process prevents the water inflow into the shafts while the shafts are being excavated in line. So very, very critical phase of the project. The ground is frozen by drilling and casing a series of closely controlled holes from the surface in a circle around the shaft diameter. So we have 88 wells that were drilled out there. The cost of each well about $2 to $3 million, and we've put a circle of wells around each of these shafts, about 44 wells per shaft. You then circulate cold through the freeze plant, cold brine down these wells, down past the Blairmore Formation, and slowly form an ice ring around those shafts. Great news is we have definitive evidence that an ice ring is formed. I was down in the shaft last week when I was out there, and you can actually see the frost coming in from the outside, from these wells on the outside, freezing the earth on the inside, and that's a critical stage for us. The aquifer is then sealed by a watertight liner during the shaft sinking, which prevents the water flowing into the shaft area once the freezing conditions are removed. The Jansen freeze plant is similar to those used in hockey rinks. So any guess in the room, how many hockey rinks do you think we can freeze with a plant? We had to do that math first. We had to understand that. It's 28 NHL hockey rinks. 25, sorry. But that's about the whole league. So it's pretty impressive. So it's a big plant, same exact technology, and it's been operating now for the last number of months. I've said that we're building a new mine enables us to use new technology that wasn't available before. So let's take a look at the initial stages. Now this is some of the coolest stuff I'm going to show you, I promise. I'm going the wrong way. Turn it upside down and go through it. Okay. And I'll explain the piece of equipment here. I'm actually going to show you a little bit of a video in a few minutes to kind of explain how we're doing this. And this is different than kind of shovels and buckets and things like that. I mean, it's a very different technology. And this technology has been used around the world, but not in the province. We intend to make the most of safe and effective innovations at each phase of Jansen's development. At the moment, we are excavating the first 50 meters of the shaft in preparation for sinking that will eventually go down to about right now we're at 16-meter diameter. We're going to take this down to about 6.5-meter diameter, and we're going to sink it over 1 kilometer deep. So think about that. That's a deep hole. We'll be sinking the actual shaft at a planned rate of approximately 3 meters per day. So pretty fast. So you do the math on that. 3 meters a day, 365 days a day. You can actually dig the shaft in about a year, but you actually have to line it and do those things. Our aim is to do it safely, and by removing all people from the bench during the shaft excavation enables us to reach these high drilling rates without risking people as we do so. We'll also use the suction system to lift all excavated material to sinking buckets that will then take the material to the surface. Now, this is one key thing that our board was very, very nervous about. I mean, extremely nervous about. We have 2 guys on the board that have about 45 years of mining experience, and they came to personally see how we were going to do this. So we have a lot of trials that have been completed. We actually have to lift the material up about 18 meters, and you'll see it on the video. And then it goes to the buckets, and it's traditionally carried up to the surface in those buckets. So they showed us, the Heron Connect came over, and they're the company that's doing this for us. They showed us all the trials. And so they started off vacuuming up gravel. So that's kind of cool, you know, they're taking up 25 feet. Then they went to little pebbles, and they went to rocks, and then they started sucking at boulders, or about this big. And you know, you can kind of visualize a vacuum cleaner. They're taking these things up 25 meters like you couldn't even see them go by. It's amazing. So we're doing a full trial. This is being built in Germany now. We're doing a full trial in March, but we have high confidence in the technology. So a big part of this, nobody down below this, I'll show you in just a second how this works. So this is a little more detailed picture of this. This graphic gives you the idea of the scale of the customized equipment that we'll use to excavate the 2 shafts. This enormous piece of equipment excavates at high rates, as well as acting like a giant vacuum to bring the rock to the surface, as I just described. This technology that is used by the supplier Heron Connect in tunneling projects around the globe is available. It can also help us achieve those rates safely. As you can see, a ladder can be temporarily allowed for temporary access to the bench area when needed. Otherwise, the bench area is kept clear of people. So we're talking down here. So this is what's actually digging the sediment out. And we'll show you on the video how close up in here. This ladder is not extended. When it's operational, all the people are up here. We only need about 4 people underground while we're doing this. So it completely changes the safety aspects of this. We intend to do a full test of the shaft sinking technology and integrated system in March. I would like to now show you a brief video clip that demonstrates the technology. Heron Connect developed this computer-generated animation of the shaft sinking technology at work, and I would like to share it with you now. So, over to Chris. Oh, hopefully you can see in the back. This is the cutting head at the bottom of the shaft. The diameter will be actually excavating about 9 meters. Once you get all the iron in there to seal everything, it gets down to about 6.9. So you can see the head frame, the sinking frame, and then where this. So this is what we're excavating right now. It's the first 50 meters of the shaft to allow us to install this. This equipment will be shipped to us from Germany in April. We should receive it sometime in May or June, and we'll start with that. So you can see it's a pretty simple process. You've got the cutting head at the bottom, and you can see this green right here. It's actually sucking up that sediment I talked about. It's going up here, and it goes up about 18 meters until it gets into these sinking buckets above. But while this is operating, it's also putting a wire mesh rebar liner on, and it's spraying shotcrete, just like we're doing manually now. It's spraying shotcrete. So we're actually putting the initial first liner on the shaft as we go down. It comes up and it gets into these sinking buckets, and then you're just taken to the surface. And so, not overly complex. This technology has been used in other mines around the world, but you can imagine if you're going to be doing this, you need to make sure once you get down into that Blairmore aquifer, you've got it sealed off well, and this can all work well for us. So right now it takes us about 3 days to cut 1 meter. We're doing that manually. Once we get this equipment in place, that'll flip around and we'll do about 3 meters per day. You can see the sediment coming up, going into the buckets. It does allow for, if you get into a boulder field or something, it does allow for manual intervention to where you can blast the rock, but it's a pretty basic thing. I was a bit worried about it, not knowing anything about this, and so we asked the Herrenkonecht guys, and this guy came over from Germany, seemed like he was about 6'9", and he was talking to our CEO, Marius Kloppers, and Marius was quizzing him and everything, and he's like, let me tell you why I'm comfortable. So he pulls out a picture, and it's of this tunneling equipment that they're using right now in Europe, and it's a 53 meter diameter